Hey folks, Swelly speaking. It's been a while since we published the video series of implementing multi-region deployment and disaster recovery in Azure. In this video, I'll provide a crash course about ARM, Azure Resource Manager. This provides a fundamental to understand the next video on deploying the actual solution. Thanks to Adityo, which contributes to this crash course. Let's get started. Before talking about the ARM, I want to take a step back to explain the concept of infrastructure as code, or IOC, which I believe many of you have heard the terms. IOC is the mechanism which allow you to define your infrastructure setup in the code. The main idea are to enable automations and much faster deployment. It also could reduce human error. ARM is a native IOC from Azure, which allow you to deploy and manage Azure resources in very modular way. With ARM, you can deploy, manage, and delete your resource group. It enables you to redeploy your solutions much easier through the development lifecycle. You can also define the dependency of your template as well as applying access controls to your resource group. There are several concepts which I need to cover to ensure that we are aligned. The first one is the Azure Resource Group. Think about resource group as a logical grouping of your Azure resource. You can manage all resources in a resource group from a single point. You can also export the template of a resource group for enable easier deployment. Resource provider is a service that supplies the resources when deployed through ARM. Each resource provider offers a set of operations, particularly of an Azure service. Here are some examples of resource provider. You can browse for more details of the resource provider in the following link. ARM are implemented with JSON as the template. It is a declarative model, which means you tell the ARM engine, here's the final state that I expect. Let the ARM engine figure out how it should deploy. You don't have to tell the ARM engine what to do in step by step. Typically, there are four sections in ARM: parameter, variable, resources, and output. Let's take a deeper look in one of the ARM example. First, it is a parameter. These are the values which we expect from user input. As can be seen, I defined the several parameters here. Each parameter will have the type, the default value, or other metadata such as description. Second, the variable. It allows us to reuse the values throughout our ARM script. Third, resources. This is the most important section where you define what resources to be created in this deployment. Fourth, the output. Optionally, you may need to capture information such as part of the execution, such as the FQDN or fully qualified domain name or IP address of some Azure resources. Okay, we have covered the basic concept. Now let's move on to the next section, how to get started the ARM template. There are typically three ways to get started. First option is you create an entirely new ARM template. Second is to browse from the existing gallery. Third, export the template from your existing resource. Here's the screenshot on how you would create a new ARM template from the Azure portal. Another alternative to author your ARM template is with Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. Not only they will provide a better experience in editing, but also enable you to validate the template before you actually deploy them. The second option, as I mentioned earlier, is to leverage on existing template, which is available in the resource template. On this link, you can see that we have more than 900 available templates for you to choose. You can pick one of them, modify them according to your needs, so that you don't have to start from scratch. Here's one example of choosing a template from gallery. You can browse the deployment script in GitHub. You can also click the deploy to Azure button, which fits in the ARM template as part of your deployment in the Azure portal. You can then fill necessary parameter values and create that deployment. Here's the third option. Suppose that you already have existing Azure resources in a resource group. You can export them by navigate to the export template menu in your resource group. As you can see that you can export them as the ARM template or other alternatives such as CLI, PowerShell, or .NET. When authoring your ARM, you would often need to perform a lot of different operations. You could leverage built-in template function which improve your productivity and efficiency in authoring your template. We have functions such as array functions, date functions, and so many more, which you can check out from that link. Okay, let's talk about some of the tips and tricks which may help you when dealing with the ARM template. Let's say you would like to create two app service plans which are deployed in two separate regions. The simplest way to do that is to create a resource and then copy and paste that to a second one. Well, that's not really a big deal if you only need to provision two resources. But what if you need to provision a lot more? And we all know that the copy and paste is not the best technique. A better way to do that is by defining them as variables. Then you make use of the copy element, which implicitly perform a loop over the variable which you have defined earlier. In this example, we perform two times of loop since the length of the web app location variable is 2. The copy element is often used together with copy index function, which indicates the index of the loop. As you can see that we are getting the value of web app stage over here. Another technique that is very useful in ARM deployment is the element of depends on. It is very often where you need to define the order of certain resource creation because one needs to be created before another. For example, we need to create SQL Server first before the SQL database. As such, we define the SQL Server in the depends on element within the SQL database resource template. One last tip, be extra careful with the API version when you define your ARM resources. Generally speaking, the later API version will introduce new properties, so make sure you correlate the API version with the properties appropriately since they are very sensitive. Thanks all of you for watching this crash course video. I hope this is useful. I'll see you in the next one, which I will show you how we deploy our solutions with the single click ARM template.